So with Father's Day coming up, every year I like to have a book to encourage you guys to read. It's funny how sports works. I'll just give you a little backstory here. We are an audience of 83% male, 17% female, give or take. And we have quite a few women that check out what we do because of the stories we do on kids, along as the college and pro stuff. So this year, the book is Tender Lions, Building the Vital Relationship Between Father and Son. In studio, I have Jeff Becker with me. Jeff is someone that I've known for a number of years through basketball. He's been at Powerhouse Hoops. He coached my son. Jeff is one of the very absolute best people that I know on the face of the planet that cares tremendously about kids. His father joins us via Skype, Brian Becker. Brian consults with companies and nonprofits to improve their overall culture. I'm reading from the book here on the back side. Brian is the one that put this book together with Jeff, father and son. And as we bring Brian Becker in, thank you so much via Skype for joining us. Where are you today, Brian?
Thanks for having me on, Brad and Jeff. I'm in Chicagoland today. That's where I live.
Great. So why this book? Where did it start? Where did the backstories come from? Let's just lay it out there for the fans. What made you decide to go down a path of a book with your son?
Well, there were two important things. One was I was very aware because of the work I'd been doing about how fatherlessness is really like an epidemic, if we were to make it a medical term, in America today. Very, very high percentage of kids, boys particularly, don't live with their dads. A lot of dads are physically present in the home, but emotionally checked out for a lot of reasons. And we saw the effects of that. It's dramatic. And then secondly, 20 years ago, Brad, I was a pretty destructive dad. I had a job where I traveled too much, I partied too much, I got involved with pornography, I crossed a lot of boundaries. When the implications of that came crashing down on my family, it was really hard, really hard. And so here we are, jump forward, I'm now 61, Jeff's 31. A couple of years ago, we said, we really, by the grace of God and a lot of hard work, we put our family back together in a pretty healthy way, emotionally, relationally. Let's tell the story, and maybe some other dads and sons will benefit from it.
And Jeff joins us here in studio. How bad was it as a kid for you? A, B, are you surprised you're sitting here talking about the resolution and making a difference now?
At the time growing up, my dad was around, and he almost lived this double life that he talks about now. And he was a man of faith. He was a person in the church. He had a great job. He came to all our basketball, baseball games. So I already had a relationship that we already merged. And he pretty much dropped his bomb and ripped his Band-Aid off and said, here's who I am. And I was 13, 14 years old.
Do you remember where and when?
Oh, absolutely. I was sitting in our living room, and I vividly remember the time and seeing how hard my mother was crying. But as a young man growing up, growing into a young adolescence, I didn't truly fully understand what was going on. I just knew that it was really hurting my mother.
Mm-hmm. And in your space, Brian, to sit there to get to that point where you were so broken that you felt like you had to tell your family what was going on, walk me through that, because I'm guessing there's probably some men that are watching this right now that either are thinking of that or have already been through it that can relate.
Well, because of how significant the issues were, the problems that I caused for myself, went as far as I became unfaithful in my marriage, and I swore I would keep that a secret forever. I would go to my grave, and what I didn't realize was how those secrets can just suck you down. And years after that, probably 10 years after that, I was still just so distraught by that I determined that I needed to be honest with my wife and my kids. If I was ever going to be a guy with integrity, I looked in the mirror 1,000 mornings and didn't like what I saw. And eventually I got the courage to get honest about that. And actually, I think, Brad, there's 3 really important lessons for my family and hopefully for any dad that wants to improve the relationship with his kids. I had to get honest with myself and those around me. That was hard, but really important. Without honesty, there's no trust in a relationship. Secondly, we were going down a road we did not understand, and we needed help. And we talked to good friends and people who understood how to rebuild relationships, got good counseling. And thirdly, when something like this happens in the family, the emotions run really high. People are angry, people are afraid. I had pride and ego issues that were going on back then. So the third thing is the spirit of humility was really important. So honesty, help, and humility.
I grew up without a dad. My dad took off when I was 9. So when I'm reading this book and going around fatherless in my teen years and professionally for all these years, there have been times where I wish I had somebody that I could just talk to when I'm trying to open a business, or when I'm making big life decisions, or when I have 4 kids and I'm trying to do everything that I did not get, which I think at times has been really good. I think at times it's been hurtful. Have you heard that same sort of response to this book? Because it really touched me in a way of, okay, at the end of each chapter, guys, just so you know, there's questions. And these questions are pretty darn direct. And you've got to be very, very open with it. So I guess what I'm wondering, Brian, is have you heard feedback from the fatherless like myself on this book?
Yes. In the last couple of months, I've gotten emails, phone calls, had lunch with a couple of men. And to a person, what I've heard was because Jeff used the term rip the Band-Aid off, we didn't start out by soft pedaling our story. I mean, we went right into it on page 1 of the book.
Yep, very quickly.
By us being vulnerable, we've given other men the permission, if you will, to be vulnerable as well, and hopefully to somehow find a way to find the courage to get honest about what's happened in their life, whether it's like our situation or someone else.
Tender Lions is the name of the book. Brian Becker, Jeff Becker, the Becker father and son, with Jeff here in studio. What do you like most about this book and how it turned out?
That's a very loaded question. But I think the biggest thing is that we don't have PhDs. We don't have doctorates or masters in relationship psychology, anything like that. We have a personal story. And I think that that's the most comforting thing to hear, because as we were talking off air, is everyone holds secrets. Everyone has some type of demon or dark something inside of them. And my dad just talked about vulnerability. And I think that communication, vulnerability, integrity, being humble, being honest, getting help, all that can hit home with anybody, whether you're male, female, teenager, I'm 31, anybody a little bit older. Everyone has something inside of them that we can let out, and it's okay to let that out, I think.
But as guys, we're really stubborn. As guys, we're afraid to be vulnerable,
Absolutely.
right? So you have to have those people in your lives. Brian, how was your wife through this?
Well, rightfully so. She was angry, really angry, and hurt. Beyond, if the scale goes from 1 to 10, Brad, she was about a 14, and rightfully so. Mm-hmm. And over time, and good conversation, tempers came down, saner conversation happened. She saw that I was repentant. I was really sorry for what happened, and I was getting counseling and going to recovery meetings, and over time she forgave me. And it was a long time, many months. And I understand that. Today, I feel like emotionally we're connected better than we ever were. We've been married almost 36 years. But there was a couple-year period in the middle that was really, really challenging, really tough for her and for Jeff and his sister.
When you guys are sitting there working on the book, this is for both of you, were there moments where you looked at one another and this has to be in the book, and Jeff, you were, wow, I didn't know? And how did you handle those conversations and the editing part of putting this together? Because it is very graphic. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not going to say sugarcoat it. From page 1, as Brian said, Were there times where you had to have some uncomfortable conversations about, wow, we're putting this in a book on paper for everybody to see?
I'll start, and Dad, if you want to move in as well. It started with, we sat down for hours and said, okay, we can't turn back time. We can't redo what happened, but hopefully we can talk about what can we do to tell our story. But if we could do this all over again, what would we really honestly say to someone that's reading this? It's kind of a guide. And it's interesting because we started as just writing stories or moments or things that I remembered compared to what he remembers.
And some are very good.
Yeah.
Some are very happy and
Right.
very, I guess, Midwestern.
Yep.
That's where it was,
Yeah.
right? So it's very nice, very
Yeah.
pretty. But to peel that back, to peel the onion back, as we said earlier, to get to that point, how difficult was it?
Well, to stay with the onion metaphor, some of it was really raw, and some of it made us cry. We went through an incredibly challenging time. I saw in Jeff, he was 14 when all this, came out. He was really angry with me, primarily because of how much I hurt his mom, my wife. Secondly, he was afraid. His life was turned upside down. Would he change schools? Would we get divorced? Would he have to move? Would all of his friends find out about this? And thirdly, he was isolated. And those three things, being angry, being afraid, and being isolated, that happens to so many young men when they don't have a strong emotional connection to their dad. And Jeff, maybe you could share some of the stats that we discovered when we were doing research for the book.
Yeah, it's so eye-opening that as we looked at fatherlessness and, whether you're physically or psychologically not there, 71% of teen pregnancies is a result of fatherlessness. 85% of child behavior disorders, childlessness or fatherlessness. 90% of runaway and homelessness. All is due to the fact that there's not a father in the home. And it's so, as we go back to our first kind of question, it's an epidemic. There needs to be someone in these, not just a son, but in a child's life that is a true positive mentor to get them out of these situations or these deep, dark demons.
There's no question. I mean, I just think of my own personal situation. It was coaches like yourself, and that's probably what has drawn you to be a coach, and a very good one. I mean, if I say Jeff Becker around the state of Arizona, people are like, great guy, knows his basketball, but an even better person. So I can see that. Brian, if someone picks up this book, what are they going to get out of it?
Well, they're going to get, I think, an emotional roller coaster ride of hard things and good things that will help them see that, one, raising a boy to be a man is too important to leave to chance. I think they're going to see that it's never too late to take the first step in the right direction. And here's the real ironic thing, Brad, is that all of that I kept secret for such a long time, when I finally got the courage to take what was down in the dark and put it in the light, I found that in that the roots of that darkness were the seeds to better life for me and my family ahead by dealing with that. And I wish I could have done it years and years earlier.
The name of the book is Tender Lions, Building the Vital Relationship Between Father and Son. Brian Becker via Skype, Jeff Becker here in studio. Guys, thanks and happy Father's Day.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.